My name is Jake Beekman, and welcome to my senior TED Talk. Today I will be talking about the factors motivating the need for better helmets in the evolution of sports. So now, has anyone here ever been interested or passionate about an activity, a sport, a hobby maybe? Now this is kind of what spurred my research in the first place, and the development of my question in general. So I've been playing hockey, the sport of hockey, for about 13 years now. As you can tell, you're very young. And I look at hockey as being one of the biggest parts of my life. I've grown up with the same kids. We've progressed as a team, progressed as individuals, and the equipment's progressed, our speed's progressed, and our size has progressed. After experiencing 2 major concussions, within these 13 years, it had taken a toll on a couple of my seasons. I had taken out, a couple weeks at a time, here and there, having to kind of catch up on different problems that I had within my concussions. And since then, I've been wondering, why wasn't I informed of these hazards and these risks? I wasn't informed by doctors, not my parents. Not even my coach. And going into this project, that was one of the key things that I wanted to focus on. Why aren't kids being, taught about the major concerns of cognitive impairment, what concussions can lead to, and what brain injury can lead to? So to give you guys a little bit of a background here, I just wanted to show you. So in 1920, the first helmet was developed in hockey. It's basically 2 leather strips stitched together with a chin guard. The purpose of this helmet was basically to just protect major brain injury, skull fractures, whatever it may be. And there was actually only 1 incident that had resulted in, or actually 2 incidents that had resulted in death and 2 skull fractures. So back then, the probability of getting a concussion or brain injury was very low. The risk of the sport wasn't high enough, the equipment wasn't developed enough, and people weren't concerned about injuring themselves. The stigma around hockey players has always promoted them as being tough, strong, and not afraid of majorly injuring themselves. So I took a story here from one of the guys that had actually experienced a major traumatizing event in the game of hockey when helmets were not introduced. Back then, there was a number of events that led to not having the right protection. So Ace Bailey, So Ace Bailey was hit by a hockey player in the early 1900s, and he was sent into the ice by a Toronto player. And it ended up being a skull fracture. He nearly died, and it really brought attention to the NHL and youth leagues around hockey. Now, as I dive deeper into this question of what are the factors that are really motivating the need for better helmets in the evolution of sports, I decided to focus more on hockey because the data surrounding all of the sports was too complex for me to center in. I feel like the data that I have collected can represent all sports in general, but I did really want to focus on what is going wrong in hockey. So who's responsible for this? Who's responsible for the uprise in brain injury currently, and what do we need to do about it? What needs to be done? So are manufacturers and material engineers responsible? Are the organization of USA Hockey responsible? Or are we ourselves responsible for injuring ourselves? So how has the game of hockey evolved over time? How does this compare to other sports? And what can these impacts impose for future abilities as an athlete and a student? Throughout my presentation, I will be looking at different factors that contribute to the responsibility of the poor performance and uprise in brain injury. Just to give you guys a little bit of a background, there are 54 ice hockey concussions that occur every 10,000 player hours. That may not seem sufficient on the large scale, however, it has taken a major toll in current sports. All right. So, who is to blame? Do we blame ourselves? Now, I wanted to examine the human nature through the lens of our adrenaline and the attraction to high-intensity sports. Now, what makes us like risky behavior? So, throughout my research, what I most commonly found was that people are using it as a weapon, protection and equipment as a weapon. They think that they can do things better, more effectively than they could without it. And they're taking more risks, and it's leading to more probability of injury. As humans, we feel the need to accomplish something that is fearful to us. We feel the need to engage in risky activity that really rewards us. Human behavior drives our willingness and urgency to engage in dangerous situations. We must ensure that protection meets this requirement. So people think that helmets and equipment protect more than it really does. Now, is that true? I don't really think so. Despite the fact that evolutionary logic, this is a study done by a psychologist, despite the fact that evolutionary logic has designed us with mechanisms that prevent us from danger, our brain is equipped with reward mechanisms that are activated when we are subject to extreme experiences. This concept that is brought up seems to make sense due to the fact that athletes are wired to feel reward in competition. When it begins to get more difficult to achieve the reward, the sport begins to evolve into a high-speed, high-contact, risky sport. Now, it becomes more difficult for us to engage in sports like this, and as human athletes, we will do whatever it takes to beat competition. You know, I know that at some levels the competition may not be high enough, but we will do whatever it takes to beat competition. And this kind of brought up, you know, more of an interesting question for me, was that psychologists believe that for extreme sports participants, it is important to build down the natural reaction of fear and go against your natural instincts. So this can be so dangerous because we will continue to evolve sports into a way that can be harmful to more than just our brain. We've seen dramatic changes in the past decade, and I don't know what we'll be able to see decades to come. Significantly enough, though, the most interesting thing that I found was repeated exposure to extreme sports situations, such as a blow to the board in a hockey hit, may lead to familiarity towards the impacts, deliberately making it a positive experience. As sports players and games continue to evolve, it is probable that human behavior and natural instincts towards life-threatening and dangerous situations has caused an unsafe environment for current athletes. Now, I feel like when I was researching this and when I found this information, it seemed to make sense to me, because when I started playing hockey in the checking leagues or in the maybe higher intensity, faster games, people, you know, you'd get hit more. You'd get familiarized with the amount of hits you were taking, and then the next season, maybe you'd take 10 really big hits. And that's fine, because you were familiar with that. You begin to really familiarize yourself with every different situation, and the more you play it, the more likely you are to endanger yourself. All right. Now, are helmet manufacturers responsible? So, throughout these three different concepts that I was discovering, I found that helmet manufacturers have the most say and the most say in basically how we perform and how we use their equipment. The qualities of well-performing helmets compared to football statistics and hockey helmets. So what the difference is between the designing of the helmets. Now I brought a helmet here to show you guys. So this is a hockey helmet. Hockey helmets are designed to be very lightweight, you know, so that players are able to keep their head on a swivel. And you know, the stigma around hockey players has always promoted them as being tough. They don't want something that's going to be really hefty on their heads. So this thing's very light, very bendable. In football, concussions have actually dropped significantly. The helmets that football players are wearing are a lot heavier, and they have a lot more technology that has gone into it. The angular rate sensors that they use are able to detect you know, the amount of gravities that your head is moving at, so they can decide whether or not you are experiencing concussion or traumatic brain injury. So there's a little bit of a room for improvement in hockey helmets, and we don't really know where that stands. So when speaking in toughness and the strength of a helmet, it's all about the impact characteristics between the sports. And recently I found that the manufacturers that are designing hockey helmets aren't focusing on the impact situations that hockey players may be involving themselves in, such as a hit to the boards, a hit to the ice. They differ completely from other sports, and they've fallen short of what really they need to be testing, and where they need to be testing the angles from, front, back, side, different accelerations, linear, rotational. A guy named Andrew McIntosh did a study on impact characteristics, saying that the impact characteristics that helmet manufacturers are testing now are not reliable, and it's almost impossible to prevent concussions in high impact situations. So what we need to do here is advise the participants of the risks that they're taking. When they're using this equipment, they must be advised of exactly how to use it and what the best way to is. So another study that I looked at was researchers at Virginia Tech did a study on 32 popular brands of helmets, finding that none of them received 5-star ratings for safety. So in football, a helmet has to receive a 5-star rating in order for it to be put on the line. In hockey, it's different. They can rate it a 3-star, 2-star, 4-star, however it may be. So basically saying that 25% of hockey helmets are the only safe ones. So what they did here was they looked into a system that actually a lot of different people are looking into for helmets, and it's called a hyoid bone system. Basically what it does is it transfers the energy from the beak. This is just an example. They're using it from a woodpecker. So it transfers the energy from the beak through and around the skull. So it disperses the energy amongst the helmet and amongst the woodpecker, of course. They tried using this idea, but it didn't really work very well. It's difficult to make a helmet that has a beak on it. So kind of just to relate this back to all the sports, I did a little bit of a trend chart here, just showing you guys that between the past 4 years, we've seen a major increase in sports-related concussions in all of these sports, except for a couple of them here. But yeah, it's concerning. It's concerning to parents, doctors, myself, and we need to figure out what needs to be done. Another question that I looked at here was, do we blame the organization and rules of USA Hockey for this increase of injury? Now, if I were a parent or if I were a coach, that would be the first thing that I would do, is I would blame the organization for the rules that they're setting. In fact, that's not true. The game of hockey is going to always be the same. Other sports are always going to be the same. The rules are always going to be there. Body checking is going to be there. 60% of concussions occur from body checks. So taking out body checks is definitely going to do something, but it's not realistic. Now, can we really allow this? Yes, people enjoy it. I enjoy it. It makes the game interesting. But is it increasing concussions and brain injury among all participants? Yes, it is. Now, the solution that I have for this is simple. We are constantly going to be changing technology. Our genes are going to be changing. We're constantly going to be progressing. We're going to have a larger population of people to choose from to play sports. We're going to have a changing mindset towards the sport. We're going to have a number of different things that basically determine whether or not we're going to participate in the sport and whether or not we're going to do well. In this chart, it basically shows trends on different heights within sports of NHL players, and how that's changed over the years and how we've progressed. And then this is another one on shots. So, you know, I'm just kind of trying to represent how sports have definitely evolved over time. And if I were to propose one single solution to this, it would be to advise the participants, parents, and coaches of the hazards that it imposes. And this, meaning this, helmet manufacturers, out of all of these, definitely do have the biggest take on it. The fabrication of a new and a well-designed helmet is at the root of the cause, and it is important for them to further their research and for me to further my research so that people are informed of what is going on. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks, Jake. All right, we'll open it up to questions both from the audience and our panel.
So I know I watch football a lot during football season, so I know like the Seahawks, for example, I see like there's this commercial where they've changed the way they hit other players, the way they tackle, they use their shoulders instead of their head to not hurt either player. Do you think something like that could happen in hockey where like the coaches find a new way of hitting people, hitting other players or checking other players so it's safer and more effective?
Yeah, that's actually been a very slow progression in hockey. Actually, only 5 years ago, they banned checks to the head in hockey in the NHL. Yep, only 5 years ago.
That's weird.
And so that's definitely taken a major toll. But I think like you said, it's definitely up to the coaches to set a mindset for the team to not go headhunting, to not go after players just so that they can make a big hit. It's part of the game, and that's how it has to be done. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, and just kind of continuing with this, like, I know the NHL used to have lots of fights, and now they don't,
Yeah.
basically, and that was just a change of the enforcement of rules that were already there.
Mhm.
Can you think of any particular penalties, like the way they penalize boarding, or the way they define them or enforce them, that could discourage the kind of most violent hits, while not impacting, like you said, there will always
Yeah.
be hits in hockey. That's part
Yeah,
of the game,
that's
and
part
that's
of the game.
accepted. So, how could you discourage the most injurious types of hits while still keeping it?
So, that's actually a good question. From my own opinion, I would say that the best way to resolve that would be, like I said, making coaches aware of what's actually happening. I know it is up to the players, but if players were able to see the statistics, and if players were able to understand these numbers, or experience a concussion, or experience a brain injury, it would dramatically reduce the amount that is happening.
I want to keep pushing back a little bit on this as well, because I'm wondering why you're so resistant to institutional level changes, right? Like, we've seen the NFL has made very significant rule changes about how you can hit, which then the coaches have had to adapt into their strategies about how do I coach players to hit and to tackle and to do this in a way that still is bone shattering but is not going to give them concussions, right? It's not like the NFL has gotten
Less fun.
are tiptoeing around each other on the football field all of a sudden. So why are these kinds of institutional rule changes not possible in hockey when they have been possible in the NFL?
So I actually did look into that a little bit. So what I found was that the people, or the fans actually, are the ones that are really instigating this. They want this. They come to the games to see it. And coaches and general managers know this. They know that fans are coming to the games to watch a fight or to watch a big hit. The majority of them. There's a good amount of them that are coming to watch a good, well-played game, but there's a large amount of people that are coming to the games to watch this happen. And a lot of them don't really care about the statistics. They don't care whether or not this is really increasing brain injury or injury among all hockey players. They really just care about making the money.
Do you think it's as much that the fans don't care about the statistics and the numbers, or that they really just don't know? Because
Yeah.
I know, like, in football, there's been a big shift in the stigma around that, like, ever since, like, a lot of light's been drawn to the issue of concussions in that sport. And, like movies have been made and, like, serious reports and stuff like that. So, do you think it's just a lack of awareness about
Yeah,
the...
I do actually. That's a good way to put it. I feel like we definitely haven't advertised the fact that things are actually happening that can be detrimental to one's future just by playing a single sport or by a single situation in a sport. And I think that it's very important for us to advertise the fact that these numbers are rising. They're not going down. They're rising rapidly, over the past decade especially, and people need to be aware.
So you talked about different types of hits too, and so there's like head to ice, there's like stick to head, there's body to head, right? There's all these different ways in here. So understanding the different types and which ones tend to cause the most injuries, how does that impact the design of the helmet?
So, I actually, that was what I was going to do my main research on, was how to design the perfect helmet.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of veered away from it a little bit. But basically, I think that the main point of where someone basically receives a concussion is from the medial prefrontal cortex. Looking at helmets like this, my old helmets, there's very little protection. And of course, concussions can occur from every point of the head. But these helmets have lacked major protection in the medial prefrontal cortex. You can see this is about an inch thick. All they care about is the weight and performance of a helmet. They don't care about, what.
So that's like here.
Yep. Right
Okay,
here.
so that's the area of the head that needs to be most well
That
protected.
needs to be most
And it's the
protected.
type of impact, like whether it's from falling onto the ice or whether it's from colliding with another player.
Yeah,
Or does
so-
that affect it?
It does affect it actually. The angular rate of motion is in the neck. So when you hit the board and your neck doesn't move as much, chances are you're not going to get a concussion.
Okay.
But if you're 5 feet away from the boards and you get hit and your head whips and then hits the board, that's going to result in a concussion. It's the acceleration that your head is getting on the hit.
And that would require a much more
Yeah, that would
cumbersome
require
helmet to
I mean, yeah,
control.
you see bikers have the helmets that extend all the way down, and then they have basically neck protection here. That's so when they fall off their bike, they're moving fast, so their neck isn't going to be moving. They want to reduce that as much as possible, and it's almost impossible to do that in hockey and in a lot of sports.
Because you need the mobility.
Because you
of
need the
head as well.
mobility, you need to be able to move around, you need to be able to look behind you, you need to be able to look for the hit when it's coming.
Don't you think part of this could be helped with better ref? I've been to a game or two. And, I feel like maybe the refs, if they were more informed and also were more consistent about making calls, don't you think that would also?
Yeah, and I think that the problem there is that there's different rules. I know USA Hockey has one set of rules for youth participation, but the NHL has a different set of rules, and minor league hockey has a different set of rules. Juniors have a different set of rules. So you have refs coming from all around that might have coached juniors, minors, whatever it may be, and I don't think that the rules are clear. I think that there needs to be one set of rules for the game, for every game, that people abide by. Of course, it's different for, if you're a sport or, a younger player, it's different. You're a little kid, your brain is still developing, but there needs to be one set of rules that everyone follows. And I think that the refs should be advised of that, and the refs should be trained for just those rules specifically.
That's all the time we have for questions. Thank you, Jake. If you could step outside for just a moment.